Sup, everyone. It is Joey D and Timmy B, and we are back for the next episode of the Flea Flicker. We talked a couple of weeks ago after Joe got married. He's still married, thank God. So that
Yes,
is
I
all
am.
good. And Joe, man, we got a football game tonight with the NFL Hall of Fame game between the Cowboys and the Steelers, two teams that we do not like very much. But
Nope.
hey, it's a football game nonetheless. We got the Hall of Fame ceremony this weekend, and we got a couple of things about training camp that's been happening. Some big injuries that, while not on the Eagles, do have a little bit of a factor on the Eagles. But Joey D, my friend, how are you doing today? First of all,
Tim, it's a beautiful day. Football is here. The season's about to start. Fantasy drafts are a coming. So it's the best time of the year, man. I've already got my tickets to the Eagles Panthers game this year. Super excited to go to that. We got a big squad going. So yeah, man, it's so close, and I'm loving all these training camp updates and different articles and podcasts. I'm seeing different stuff about the Eagles every day, and just about the league overall. So it's the best time of the year, man. I love it.
absolutely. And friendly reminder to everybody watching this right now, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button to like the video and also subscribe to our channel as we are going to start regularly recording again. We'll still probably do two a week. We'll do picks during the week, recap the week as well, maybe a little sprinkle stuff. And although we might have dropped the ball on division by division recaps, we can still have a bunch of you guys on, our guests, our friends, our fans, to talk about your respective team season outlook, as we got basically a month and a week before the regular season starts. So plenty of opportunities to talk. But Joe, the big thing that has happened in the last couple of days, the Indianapolis Colts have two big injuries. They're basically the same injury too. Newly acquired quarterback Carson Wentz and All-Pro guard Quentin Nelson, one probably arguably be maybe the best offensive lineman in the NFL. They both have a bone injury in their foot that requires a surgery. Now, it's a large window, 5 to 12 weeks, but that's huge because we both said a month ago, a couple of weeks ago, that after the Julio trade, it's still going to be Colts Titans, and it's whoever's going to win that tiebreaker, much like last year. But now it's kind of like they're both out the 12 weeks. Colts could be 0-9, 0-10, whenever that is. But Joe,
Oh
your
yeah.
thoughts? I mean, as an Eagles fan, about the Carson Wentz trade, or the injury as well as Quentin Nelson. I mean, that not only does that hurt the Colts, that hurts the Eagles as well.
It does. Carson Wentz needed to play either 75% of the snaps this year or 70% of the snaps if the Colts go to the playoffs for the Eagles to receive a first round pick. And right now, it is not looking like that's going to be the case. So, I think a lot of Eagles fans, like myself, had, kind of been counting that as a first round pick already. I mean, Carson Wentz has only played less than 75% of the snaps one of his previous 5 seasons. So the odds were in his favor, but now it's not looking so good. So, kind of resigned to, that being a second round pick, which, while it's disappointing, it's a second instead of a first. It is also kind of vindicating that, we traded Carson Wentz away, for a high pick, and now like he's injured, and we've done this as Eagles fans, for years. We knew this is definitely a risk, and I mean, it's definitely a bummer for Carson Wentz to have his new tenure at Indianapolis just kind of start out in this way. I mean, just already under a lot of scrutiny coming off the worst season of his career, and in a new team, a new environment where you know a lot of people think it's just a much better situation for him. And now, to kind of start off on this foot, and there's already some controversy, like let's bring back Nick Foles because he's a third string QB for the Bears, and that connection with Frank Reich. And then Philip Rivers today saying, "Oh, I don't know, maybe I'd come out of retirement for the right team." So, we know how Carson Wentz responds to a competition at the QB spot, and getting his feelings if he feels like the team isn't as behind him as they should be. So I don't know what the Colts are going to do there. But I mean, in addition to those two injuries, which are obviously huge, I mean, Ryan Kelly, their center, who's a Pro Bowler, he's been out for a couple of weeks with a hyperextended elbow, and Darius Leonard, their best defensive player, he's been out with an ankle injury. So I mean, this Colts team is banged up,
Yeah.
and just I mean, even if they were at full strength, you seen their first 5 games, Tim? It is a rough slate. I think they got Seattle, um, the Rams, the Ravens, um, the Dolphins, and someone else. I think the Titans.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is a rough slate for a first 5 games. I'm not sure they would. They could still go 0-5 those games, even if they were at full strength.
Right.
If it's Jacob Eason playing a couple of those games, yeah, it's going to be a really rough start. So,
Well, and even best case scenario, let's say Carson Wentz only does take the 5 weeks. That basically puts us at week 1. Aside from some OTAs and some mini camps, he's had 2 practices. No way they're going to start him week 1 if he's ready to go. So, and now here's the thing, Joe. Without Quentin Nelson as well, I know a big thing for fantasy is Jonathan Taylor. Is definitely a first round, second round caliber back. He's definitely in the top 10, 15, 20 fantasy running backs. But now you said the center, Ryan Kelly's out, Quentin Nelson's out. That's not a good look for a young running back and Jonathan Taylor, especially with potentially Jacob Eason. I know they signed Brett Hundley as well over the weekend with the injury news. It's like that's going to be a heavy workload for a guy without an offensive line. But on the flip side, Joe, with the Eagles pick, yes, likely not a first round pick. But hey, if it is the full 12 weeks and they end up 0-8, 0-9, that could still be an early second pick, which is more or less a first round pick for everybody who falls out. And with the other 2 first round picks the Eagles have, that's still plenty of flexibility to make some moves and go get the guy that they need or trade back at a couple more picks or make some sort of big splash. So it's not the end of the world unless the Colts for some reason go undefeated with Jacob Eason and win the Super Bowl. And then you're looking at the end of the second round instead of the early second round. But that is a huge injury, not only for the quarterback, but Quentin Nelson as well. And we've seen, I mean, Phillip Rivers wasn't fantastic last year. They still made the playoffs. Even a couple of years ago, Quentin Nelson's one of the better offensive guards, offensive linemen in the NFL. So even with him and Ryan Kelly and that offensive line, they held their own, especially in a division when you have the Jaguars and God knows what's happening in Houston this year. But yeah, that's a huge injury.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely have to reach out to Trent as we get a little bit closer and we know who the starting quarterback is and who's healthy, as well as our guy Sarab, to see what it's like. But as a Ravens fan, Marlon Humphrey's probably licking his chops to see Jacob Eason week 5 on Monday Night Football, nonetheless.
Right, that's exactly right. And just to follow up on that just a little more, not to spend too much time on Indianapolis, but this has long-term ramifications for the Colts as well. I mean, they've got Wentz on this deal for, I think that I think like they have like 4 more years on the contract, but they can essentially get out of it after year 2. But I mean, if this year he's playing half the games and, he's not fully healthy, and I mean, this is a Super Bowl caliber roster outside of the quarterback and maybe the skill positions. But, if they're still like, okay, let's give him another year to figure it out, they could really be stuck in this, QB purgatory where they're too good to get a good quarterback in the draft, but they're not good enough to, do any damage in the playoffs. So, definitely, a tough situation for, a lot of teams, in similar positions, but, for the Colts specifically, with a guy like Carson Wentz, who's just had such a strange career arc going from, a promising rookie year, MVP second season, injury plagued and lack of skill positions in his third and fourth year, but, still kind of decent. And, then the worst QB in the NFL last year, now to this, like, it's just such a weird QB arc. I really can't think of another player that, his situation compares to. But, we've seen that talent. So, I just feel like the Colts are going to, especially Frank Reich, who loves Carson Wentz, they're just going to be inclined to, kind of stick with them maybe a little bit longer than they should.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Colts do. And then the other big injury that I wanted to talk about happened in the NFC West. And this is probably I'm sure there's plenty of other smaller injuries. We'll get into it with the Eagles and the Ravens with our respective teams a little bit later, Joe. But second-year running back Cam Akers for the Los Angeles Rams tore his ACL. So he is out for the year. And he was a popular pick. I know I drafted him very early in fantasy, especially in that offense. He was disappointing the first half. He had an excellent second half, scoring a bunch of the TDs for the Rams. But this is a huge injury because you got Matt Stafford, you still have Cup, you still have Robert Woods, you still have Tyler, you still have all these great offensive weapons in the passing game. But since that one good year from Todd Gurley, the running game has been pretty bad, and they don't have that guy, and they keep getting injured. So I think it's a huge injury, not industry. My goodness, for the Rams, man. But talk about the Rams, because now you're saying, all right, well, we got a nice young back from Cam Akers. He's gone. We got to rely on Matt Stafford and the passing game still. That's got to be brutal because there aren't too many running backs out there right now. Todd Gurley's still available, but I don't know if he's going to go back there.
Right. Yeah, I don't think Todd Gurley's coming back to the Rams anytime soon. They've said they're gonna, handle it internally. So I guess that means Darrell Henderson, is going to get the majority of the work. I think they had an undrafted guy last year end up making the team. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but they're kind of high on him, so he might get some work too. And also shout out their 7th round pick rookie running back Jake Funk out of Maryland. Went to
Ooh.
I'm forgetting Walt Whitman High School in Montgomery County. Was in the same grade as me. I am definitely on his highlight reel because he stole my ankles off a screen one game and it was bad. But he might be able to get some work. And I think that
Hey.
one of the things that is in the Rams' favor for this, Sean McVay is a lot of people think he's a very high quality offensive coordinator, and he's still pretty good, I'd say. But I mean, having Matt Stafford now over Jared Goff and in that Sean McVay offense, having Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, they signed Deshaun Jackson, they drafted Tutu Atwell. They've got a lot of speed and a lot of playmakers on the outside. I really think that with Sean McVay's creativity and Matt Stafford's arm, instead of trying to run to set up the pass, they're going to be passing to set up the run. It's going to make things a little bit easier for those guys like Darrell Henderson and Jake Funk and the other undrafted guy. I can't remember. So definitely going to be interesting.
And I'm looking at their depth chart now. Jake Funk is currently listed 3rd. Xavier Jones might be that guy. He's listed 2nd behind Darrell Henderson. But they also have some speedy wide receivers like Van Jefferson. He could definitely, hold his own to kind of take some carries or do some reverses or whatnot. And now, Joe, switching from that Cam Akers injury, a nice little segue to some training camp stories in the first week or so of training camp. Dan Campbell of the Lions, speaking of the Matt Stafford, Jared Goff trade, Dan Campbell is not disappointing at all. He is doing exactly what people expected him. He's doing burpees. He's doing up downs in practice. He said today he drinks 80 ounces and like 6 espresso shots of coffee each and every day. He is a football guy, true and true. Now, Joe, you played football. You're a football guy. How much does that translate from the coaching to the players? His system might be terrible, but hey, he's one hell of a motivator. I'll give him that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely can have a positive impact on the team when you're bringing that energy, and when it's genuine. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, if it's faked or forced at all, players can pick up on that, and they feed off of that energy. But from what I can tell, it looks like Dan Campbell really is just a true football guy, and just passionate about the sport, passionate about the team. He came up in the years where, before the NFL got a little bit softer. I watched one of his press conferences yesterday. He was telling this awesome story about his first day at Giants training camp as a rookie. And there was just a huge brawl, like literally the first snap with pads on. And, he was thrown right in the midst of it. So, relevant for, the Giants brawl, which we'll get to in a sec. I just love, his stories and his attitude. A fun guy to root for. I'm just, interested to see how it translates onto, an actual football product, for the whole team, for the Lions.
Yeah. And it's kind of unfortunate as well because we'll get to this in a second. Aaron Rodgers is still on the Packers, but and that's been the issue with the Lions. We were talking about last year. You said that they're just an average team where they should, on paper, they have talent, they have good players, and yes, Stafford is a little bit better than Jared Goff, but Jared Goff went to a Super Bowl. And it wasn't all him; it was the system and the defense and everything. But he can hold his own. So the Lions have the talent. They just need that coaching. And first they need to be healthy and figure it out. But I don't see a reason why they might not be able to maybe overtake the Vikings for second place. And who knows what the Bears
Ah.
are doing with Justin Fields. We'll get to that in our season predictions show.
So yeah, I'll argue with you on that one, Tim, because I think the Lions might be the worst team in the NFC this year. I mean,
Wow.
who are their starting wide receivers? It's Brashad Perryman,
Woo!
and it's I think Quintus Cephas and Amon Ra St. Brown. You're telling, and you got Jared Goff. And let me just say this: I think that Jared Goff is a significant downgrade from Matt Stafford.
Hey, they have
Just
Tyrell Williams, they have
there you go.
Geronimo
Okay,
Allison, they got
yeah.
TJ Hawkinson. So yeah, I mean,
TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift and their offensive line are the only things that I can point to on that offense and say, I like that. I don't like their quarterback. I don't like their receivers. Their defense also still needs some work. I think that, right now in the NFC, I think either the Lions or the New Jersey Giants are the worst teams in the NFC. I don't know which one. I think I'd pick the Giants over the Lions, but it's close to me.
It is. I mean, and we'll see. Again, we're still early. Haven't done all my
Right.
research yet. But speaking of those Giants, Joe, and you mentioned it, they got into a little bit of a little fight the other day, where there was Daniel Jones at the bottom of the pile. Joe Judge made him run sprints and basically did the workout punishment of sprints, up, downs, wall sits, you name it. That all the stuff we don't like to do when you're part of a team. And then he sent all the coaches away. He talked to the teams himself. And now, Joe, another question as a former football player. Joe Judge, do you think that was kind of like the Belichick in him coming from that system being like, hey, we didn't do this shit in New England, cut the shit here? Or do you think that's just his personal philosophy? And I guess the two extremes of Dan Campbell, who's like, hell yeah, brother, like let's hit each other. And then Joe Judge being like, hey guys, that's not cool. I guess where are you on the Joe Judge handling of that situation as well as just the Giants fight in general?
Well, so I think that Joe Judge is obviously pissed about it, and rightfully so. I think if you're getting in a serious brawl with literally, and the way it was described is that like the entire team
Yeah.
was out there. And I mean, Daniel Jones at the bottom of the pile, that's your starting quarterback. Like now, I don't think that highly of Daniel Jones. And he said after the fact that, he didn't mind being in there because he doesn't see himself separate from the rest of those guys. Sure, bro, whatever. But, if he gets injured and say he misses the season, say he misses one game from a training camp brawl, that's unacceptable. You cannot have that. And that's just flat out stupid. And just, it, in my mind, it just seems like this Giants team, they've still got a lot of pent up anger and aggression over not making the playoffs as a 6-10 team last year. And, they're taking it out on each other and they're being kind of stupid about it. Now, let me also say that Joe Judge's handling of it, making these guys run sprints, do up downs, that's what I was doing in high school, in middle school as punishments for stupid stuff. Like these are adults. These are guys, these are vets. Like Logan Ryan has been out there, for a long time. Leonard Williams, a veteran. Like, just on that defense alone, like, there are guys who, I'm sure did not appreciate that because I don't know. I just don't think that's the way that it should be handled at that level. Now, I mean, it's a style of coaching, but let me also point out the fact that they signed Joe Looney, the offensive lineman from the Cowboys, and I think that before this fight happened, he was interviewed and talked to and said that like, oh, I don't mind doing sprints and whatnot. Like that's cool that you're going to push me that hard. After that practice and all those sprints, man's retired.
He retired. Yeah, and I think that's the big thing too is that the punishment. Maybe if you just made him do like one sprint, like hey, just run one out real quick, like let's. But also like in terms of the fight too, there's always going to be training camp fights. It's always going to happen. Generally, they're more one-on-one, like a defensive back and a wide receiver, or D lineman. But also on the first day of pads, not saying don't hit as hard as you can, but it stemmed from a couple of hard hits on one particular play. And if this happened 2 or 3 weeks down the road, it's like, all right, well, we've had handful of practices with pads. We're used to getting hit. We played a preseason game, so you can hit a little bit hard. But the first day, you shouldn't be going head hunting just because you have pads on. And so, yeah, I think that's really interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how these players react in the next couple of weeks going into the season, but also how Joe Judge does, and we'll see if any injuries do stem from that. But the Giants are a little bit dysfunctional. We'll say that. But look, and I know I said I haven't done too much research, but I am not picking them to win the division, so they are all good on that end. And then one more thing before we get into our respective teams, Joe, we do have to talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. Almost retired, almost got traded. He still does not want to be there, but they reworked his deal so he can leave after this year. They brought in Randall Cobb, so it looks like he is playing this year. In his press conference, it was very nice. He brought receipts. He said, "I love the fans." He corrected himself. He didn't say organization, but he and you generally saw that. You were like, yeah, this guy loves playing for the like the team, the Packers. He loves the players. He loved, even LaFleur. Like they've had their headbutts, but when LaFleur's like 25-3, like you can't really like argue against the guy. So Aaron Rodgers is back in Green Bay. Right now, I'm having them number 2, maybe number 3, depending on tiebreakers. Obviously, Tampa Bay is number 1. But your thoughts on this whole Aaron Rodgers situation, and then him returning to Green Bay, and how that season's going to unfold? We thought last year was his revenge tour after losing the NFC Championship game. Is this the revenge tour for Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to follow. Him and Devante Adams both like sent out that last dance photo. And, Devante Adams also very well may not be back after this season too. I don't love that comparison. I mean, neither of these guys, like Aaron Rodgers has one Super Bowl from, a long time ago. Devante Adams does not have one. That last dance was coming off of 3 straight NBA championships.
Like if Tom Brady said today that hey, we're trying to run it back and then this is it for me if we do win, I'd be like, great, let's last dance this. But you can't do that on the Packers when you lose the NFC Championship game every year.
Exactly. So I've heard some people say that but it's that energy of and that desperation of this is it, we got to go all in this year, that's going to push them over the top. I really just don't see that. I mean, they've what have they done to push them over the top? They really didn't add that much to the team. I think they lost their center, right? Corey Linsley, the best center in football.
I believe they did. I can check the depth chart real quick.
Yeah, he went to the Chargers, I'm pretty sure. Great signing by them, by the way. But I mean, I just don't really see this Packers team as significantly improved off of last year's team. And I mean, outside of that mentality of, it's our last ride, we got to go all out this year. I mean, maybe that, maybe that means that, if it's the NFC Championship and it's 4th down and Matt LaFleur calls for the field goal, Aaron Rodgers just refuses to come off the field that time, maybe. But outside of that, I just don't really see how this, elevates the Packers more to, than what they already were with Aaron Rodgers last season. And, the flip side is if this season starts out rough for the Packers and, things get, they start looking dicey, I mean, that can spiral out of control into, just a really dysfunctional season where a lot of players kind of throw in the towel because, they know okay, well, this is it. I mean, Rodgers isn't coming back here next year. He doesn't care, why should I care too? I don't see that really happening, but if a couple losses happen, together, it's something that, you could keep an eye out for and, could potentially see happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's still going to be 11, 12, 13 win team with the 17 games, maybe 14, depending on how that goes up. But you said it, aside from that, they didn't really improve. The defense is still the same. Now, the defense has gotten better in previous years. So, but yeah, I mean, the only offensive lineman I recognize right now is David Bakhtiari, which is still great. But yeah, I'm with you.
And isn't he coming off injury?
I believe he is. Yeah, he was questionable on the depth chart, so I don't know if that it's coming off a serious injury. But I'm with you. The Packers are still going to be there. They're probably still going to win the division. They're still going to be in contention for the NFC. But this people, and like you said with the last dance, people are acting like they're going to go undefeated and win the whole thing. That's not the case. They're going to do the same as last year. They're going to go 14-3, 13-4, maybe 15-2, depending on how the ball rolls here and there. They're still going to be in contention, but they just got to get over the hump. But that's why we play the game, Joe. That's why we play the game. Now let's move to our respective teams, Joe. how are the Eagles doing? What's happening in Eagles camp? How's Joe Flacco? I see he was throwing some dimes, so he's doing great. But how's the backup quarterback Jalen Hurts doing?
Yeah, so it's been a fun camp to follow so far.
Mhm.
With Jalen Hurts, he's from what I understand, he's been kind of up and down. He's had some good moments, but he's still, struggle with the consistent accuracy, struggle with getting the ball out on time. But I love everything that I hear from him when he's talking to the press and being asked about, these Deshaun Watson trade
Right.
rumors. He's just like, I'm above it all. Rent is due every day. Like, I swear, he's got all these different sayings that are so motivational, and like, he's got one for every situation. It seems like. So I mean, he's saying all the right things. He's putting in all the work. It's really just the concerns about the consistent accuracy, and just throwing the ball well on a game day to play to play, game to
Yeah.
game basis. So it's going to be interesting to see how that translates to actually on the field, because I mean his as a mobile quarterback, he does at practice when you're just passing and you can't be tackled anyway. It doesn't really let your best attribute shine as the style of play that him and Lamar both kind of have. So I definitely want to see some improvements from Jalen Hurts, and I still really hope he can be the guy. But you know, this training camp right now, he hasn't made that like significant jump from year one to year two that I think everyone was kind of hoping for to solidify himself as the franchise QB. And again, it's only practice. He'll
Hey,
prove that
it's
at
still
the
week one,
games.
still practice, new system,
Exactly.
new coaching, new everything. We'll see in the couple of preseason games and as we continue to practice if he makes those improvements that you guys are looking for.
Exactly. So, I've outside of that, like I said, I've been loving what I'm hearing from him. Other big news with the Eagles, Devante Smith's first week, he showed up and, has looked the part. Just runs precise routes, always leading the wide receivers through the drills, great hands. He's had some big plays. I think that I think the second day of practice, he caught like a 70-yard bomb against newly signed former Steelers corner Steven Nelson,
Mhm.
who sneaky good player, and kind of a weird situation with him. Just as an aside, he got released by the Steelers partway through free agency because he wanted a raise, and the Steelers actually wanted him to take a cut. So he was like, "All right, let me hit free agency and I'll
Yeah,
get paid." But it was already kind of partly
yeah.
through free agency. And teams had signed their corners, and he wanted a big deal, which he's had some pretty good seasons, and he's relatively young. I think he turns 28 this season. So he's not old by any means, and has been durable and productive over the last couple of years. So he expected a big payday and kind of got screwed out of it with the way that his situation went. And the Eagles were able to get him on a very cheap 1 year deal. So and that fills the biggest hole that we had on
Mhm.
our roster, which was that cornerback two opposite Darius Slay. Because outside of it or before we signed him, nobody knew who that corner two was going to be. But with Devante Smith showing up, like I said, 70-yard bomb against Steven Nelson, great play. But he did end up tweaking, I believe, his knee. I think he's got like a
Welcome to the
small.
Eagles, baby.
I know, right? It's as soon as he gets with this Eagles training staff, he just made a glass immediately. But so that's a little bit concerning with his, durability concerns with his size. But from what I understand, the team is not concerned about it. They're just being overly cautious. It hasn't been a situation where like, he left the field and went to the facility or like the trainers. Like apparently when it happened, he was like still on the sideline. He's still been at practice, like, with the jugs machine. So not doesn't seem like something that's too serious, but you never know with the Eagles.
You also just
Um,
don't want that storyline too of being like Devonte
exactly,
Smith walked off, got sidelined off. So it doesn't seem that serious, but like you said, you never know with the Eagles.
exactly. But sticking with the receivers, Jalen Rager has not looked great in practice, just not really flashing. Today, apparently, not sure what he did wrong on one rep, but passing game coordinator took him aside and was apparently yelling at him. And then Nick Sirianni came over and started ripping into him as well. And while I'm on Nick Sirianni, let me just say I have loved everything that I've seen out of him, both in the press conferences now since that first one where he was very awkward. Since he's been just talking about football, he just, he's got so much passion and energy. It's just, very apparent watching him talk and, very knowledgeable about the game as well. And, just watching little clips and, tidbits from practices, he's very, very hands on, which is very different from the way Doug Peterson, his staff were last year, just getting with the receivers or a tight end or whoever it is and just, or, the offense as a whole, someone has a illegal formation or something, correctable. Like he does not let that slide and just does a good job holding people accountable. So really like what I'm seeing out of Sirianni. Jalen Reagor, want to see some more out of him. Travis Fulgham's looking good. Some of the other young receivers looking all right, flashing a little bit. Interesting, Zach Ertz still on the roster and is actually practicing and like fully participating, which is really interesting. I'm not sure if Howie Roseman is still trying to trade him and kind of playing chicken right now with other teams.
You might just have to wait until somebody gets a bit, like if Mark Andrews goes down, I bet you Eric
exactly
calling
right.
out.
But it's a game of chicken because if that happens to Zach Ertz and Zach Ertz goes down, well, now you're stuck with him for $8.5 million.
Right.
That, is a lot of people really don't think he's worth that much at this point in his career, especially when you've got Dallas Goedert, who you're going to need to extend next year as well, and who's going to be taking, the bulk of the snaps at tight end 1. So, that's, an interesting game of chess that Howie Roseman's playing. Going to be interesting to see how that works out. But the big competition for the Eagles was the left tackle competition. Andre Dillard, former first-round pick from a couple years ago who missed all of last year with the biceps injury, versus Jordan Mailata, the former Australian rugby player who is, not experienced whatsoever with football at all, but is in I think this will be his 4th year in the NFL and is very young. He's 23 years old, while Andre Dillard, who was drafted 2 years after him, is about to be 26 years old. So little context there. And last year, Mailata, got plugged in when all the offensive line injuries happened and, showed a lot more than I think people expected from someone with his lack of experience. And so far in training camp, it has been clearly Mailata, clearly. Not necessarily, not only has Andre Dillard been bad, his whole thing is he's an athletic tackle, but he can't anchor against power rushes. And, he's just getting bull rushed into oblivion. I think there's a play yesterday where he got bull rushed into Joe Flacco and essentially sacked Joe Flacco. Unfortunately, Flacco's now mobile enough to escape. Exactly. He's a liability at this point. And, the only reason it seems like there's still a competition is because he was a former first-round pick while Mailata was a 7th-round pick. Right. But, Mailata is big. He is playing really well. It's like I said, it's not just that Dillard has been bad. Mailata has been playing really, really well. On a run play yesterday, apparently he pancaked Brandon Graham. That's a very good NFL veteran going up against, a guy who's got such little experience in the game of football. And, he's just in the best shape of his life and just really dominating that competition. So if they continue to compete in the split snaps, it's just because Dillard was a first-round pick and not because of merit. Outside of that, on the defensive side of the ball, both Derek Barnett and Josh Sweat having really good camps at defensive end. Really interested to see how Jonathan Gannon kind of lines up different formations. We've been doing some 3-4 looks, some 4-3, some 4-3 under with a stack linebacker, and they've been using Ryan Kerrigan that role a little bit. So a lot of different kind of scheme versatility and variety, which is very different from what Jim Shorts kind of had the last couple of years. So really interested to see how that goes. And the rookie corner, Zach McPherson, having a phenomenal camp. He's been making plays every day, very physical. I think he had 4 pass breakups yesterday, just in one day. That's a lot for a corner, especially a rookie corner. So excited to see some good stuff out of the young guys. But it's been a fun camp. Overall relatively healthy. Just want to see Devante back on the field. Want to see Jalen Hurts and Jalen Rager, continue to get better and better. But that's enough about the Eagles. It's enough about me. Joe Flacco's been okay too. Captain check down a lot of the practices apparently.
Hey, that's his bread and butter, baby. 4th and 29 to Ray Rice for
There we
first
go.
down. But yeah, the Ravens, man, we are still cruising along. Our quarterback, Lamar Jackson, he has tested positive. So I believe he returns Friday or Saturday of this week. Now, positive spin zone, Trace McSorley has been getting all the number one reps and all the number one times. So that's just some added experience, added chemistry should another situation like last year happen. Not saying we're going to go 14-2 with Trace McSorley, but we can still do pretty well with the rest of our team built around the quarterback position.
Right.
Our first round pick, Rashad Bateman, looking fantastic in practice, and I did not like the pick. Hopefully, I do eat my words, but he is looking fantastic right now, Joe. They had a practice at the stadium in front of the fans the other night.
I saw this video.
Yeah, he beat Marlon Humphrey. Also, just fantastic throw from Trace McSorley, just right on the money. But he's been beating some Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters. Even I think Marcus Peters was had some quote being like, "Damn, we got a good one from him." So he's doing well. James Prochet, a guy we took a couple of years ago, he's catching everything, which makes sense because when we drafted him, they were like, "Yeah, he's led college football in receptions the last 2 years with 120 per season." So that's good to see that he's catching everything. Mark Andrews still doing well. J.K. Dobbins doing excellent. Gus Edwards also tested positive, but we extended him. So the offense is looking good. Bradley Bozeman's doing fantastic at center. Left tackle is a little bit weak right now since Ronnie Stanley is still recovering. But we did draft we signed some guy from Oklahoma who is basically like a poor man's Orlando Brown, still that 6'8", 340-pound guy. Apparently he's doing really well, as a late round pick or an unsigned rookie. So the offense is doing great. Hopefully once Lamar gets back, it just keeps on clicking, keeps on doing well, especially for that passing game. So that's good defensively. We signed Justin Houston, baby, which is a huge sign. $4 million deal, $1 million base, $1 million signing bonus. The other $2 million are incentives based on sacks, which is what we need. So I'm glad we worked that in the deal.
Just a little aside there. It's crazy how many veterans that have been good got such cheap 1-year deals, like Justin Houston, Ryan Kerrigan. I mentioned Steven Nelson and Anthony Harris, the safety we got from the Vikings. I mean, he led the league in interceptions 2 years ago and was on the franchise tag last year, and we got him for 1 year, $5 million. It's crazy how many veterans that have good good resumes are not getting these big deals. And I think a lot of that has to do with the COVID affecting the salary cap this season. And a lot of teams and players are expecting next season, when the salary cap expands tremendously, they'll be able to get those big money deals then.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely happy that we got that. I was at the beach with some friends when the news broke. We were definitely excited. It's just nice for a bunch of young guys too. I mean, Odafe, our other first-round pick, he is doing fantastic as well as Dalen Hayes, and they're both excited to have Justin Houston. The secondary is looking great. Knock on wood. Tavon Young stays healthy, but when you have Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Jimmy Smith, Tavon Young, all those great guys, Chuck Clark back at safety, I mean, as long as we all stay healthy, we're going to be good. Justin Tucker's probably kicking 90-yard field goals in practice still.
Let's go.
So it's all good down here. We're just excited to have Lamar back this weekend. I believe Justin Houston will be able to practice this weekend after he's done that couple-day protocol with COVID, as well as Gus Edwards. Man, it's looking good. And my friends and I were talking. The Steelers are still going to be there. I don't think they're going to be bad, but they're still going to be there. 8-9 wins. Maybe spoiler, but it might be just.
I think they could be bad. I think the Steelers could be bad.
Look, I know them, Joe. They're going to be bad, but bad. I mean, they went 8-8 with Duck Hodges as their quarterback.
I know, but Roethlisberger, it depends on that arm. He's saying it feels better than it did last year. So maybe, but if it's like it was last year, and that offensive line is as bad as I think it's gonna be. I mean, they lost so many important pieces. I think they have 5 new starters on the offensive line. You
Yeah.
know, like not to, not only are they downgrades from what they had just in terms of players, but no chemistry there as well. So I think the Steelers could be in for their Mike Tomlin's first losing season as their head
Mhm.
coach.
And plus you got to consider too. I know a lot of us talk about strength of the schedule and everything, but they won the division last year, which means
Right.
they play the Bills, the Ravens play the Dolphins, which should be a winnable game. Browns get the Patriots. That could be an interesting game to play. We'll talk about the Patriots later on as we get a little bit closer in our predictions. We play the AFC West this year, so we're all playing the Chiefs anyways. But then they also have the Titans, and they don't luck out. They get to play the Colts, like another team in the division, the Ravens.
Aha.
That's going to be tough for them. But that's the Ravens report. I'm just focusing on our wide receivers and our passing game, as rightfully so. We should. Rashad Bateman doing great. Sammy Watkins also doing great, just kind of doing his own thing, not really standing out, but just being Sammy Watkins. Prochet having a good one. Andrew's still doing his thing. Nick Boyle still doing his thing. So it's only going to get bigger and better the next couple of days and weeks once we get Lamar back, and hopefully he can gel with them, just like Trace McSorley. But that'll do it for me, Joe. Do you have any final words about today's episode or football? I mean, we got a Hall of Fame game
Yeah,
tonight.
I was gonna say anything you're looking for in that game. I mean, it's definitely gonna be deep backups versus deep backups. And two teams that neither of us like at all. So, that's something. But, I'm just interested in, watching Hard Knocks when this comes
Yeah,
out. So, like I hate the Cowboys, but I think that Hard Knocks is gonna have some great moments of Mike McCarthy just looking like an idiot. What's up with this Dak Prescott, shoulder injury on top of coming back from the ankle. I mean, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. So, there's a couple good storylines to kind of follow there. And, hopefully we kind of catch some moments live that,
yeah.
like maybe there's a fight in the game and, we get like that as like, one of the Hard Knocks highlights or something like that and get like the in-depth details. I don't know, something like that. That'd be pretty cool.
I just can't wait. Once kickoff happens and we're like, yes, football, and then both teams go 3-and-out and then take out their starters, and it's like, all right, what other baseball, any good baseball games on tonight, or
Yeah.
anything good on Netflix that I should watch? But definitely excited to that, and congrats to everybody going to the Hall of Fame. They're doing last year's ceremony as well as this year's, like every other Hall of Fame. We got Peyton Manning, we got Calvin Johnson, definitely people much deserving. So definitely excited to kind of see that ceremony as well. Listen to their speeches. So definitely excited for this weekend and football to be back. But Joe, any final words, my friend?
Man, that's all I got, man. I'm just so glad we're here, buddy.
I'm so glad we are here too. And make sure, once again, you guys like the video, subscribe to our channel, comment down below if you would like to be a guest on our show to talk about your respective team. Maybe if there's enough interest, maybe a Flea Flicker fantasy league or some sort of prediction group or whatever. So definitely let us know if you're interested in being a guest on our show. If we would like to talk about your respective team, we'll reach out to
And
all of
if
our
you and if you have questions, like you wanna ask a question for us to answer on the podcast, throw
yes.
that out there too. If you want to say, Tim, your headset looks ridiculous. Joe, your AirPods are subtle and fresh. Throw that in there too. Give us some ratings, reviews, thumbs up, all that
Also,
good stuff.
also just ask us football questions. If you're a Vikings fan, you're like, why didn't you talk about how great Irv Smith is in practice? Let us know. Like we literally hop on this and we say, all right, let's talk about these couple of things. So if you have a topic or a team that you might want us to take a little bit deep dive into come training camp, definitely let us know, because Joe and I can definitely read some articles, look at some tweets and stuff, and then we can talk about your team, because we're here for you guys, not just the Eagles and the Ravens.
That's right. That's right, Timmy B. But
All right. Well, I'm just going to point both ways, saying that is Joey D over there, one way or the other. And I am Timmy B, and we will see you guys in the next couple of days or next week or so as we talk some more football. Peace.
have a good one.